What's up, everybody? I got a question for you guys today. If I were to ask you to name everything that you love in life, how long would it take you to name yourself? Now, this is something that I struggled with for a while because before, I don't think I would have named myself. And I think most people wouldn't. And I think that's the issue. Most of the time, we're so focused on how we relate to the external world that we barely focus on how we're relating to ourselves. But the thing is, how we relate to ourselves is how we relate to the world. And so if we want to actually change how we view the world, we have to start with ourselves. I used to believe my self-worth was tied to achievement, how hard I worked, how disciplined I was, and what I was able to do for others. And I didn't realize it then, but I was practicing conditional self-love. And this is a tricky place to find yourself in, because if all of a sudden you can't do the things that you want to for others, you can't show up the way you want to for others, your self-worth diminishes. When I first got sick, everything changed. I couldn't show up for the friends how I wanted to. I was stuck in bed most of the day. I could barely show up for myself. And I had to rely on so many people doing everything for me. They had to make my food. They had to drive me to places. I could barely talk. I could barely walk. And it required so much help from other people. And I think that's what started making me realize that I was loving myself conditionally. And looking back, I can see clear patterns that show this. Like in high school golf, for example, I spent years stressing over my golf game. And at a certain point, I hated myself so much that I would call myself worthless and a piece of shit when I was out on the golf course when I would just miss a short putt or something. It's like, it's golf, you know? It's not the end of the world. And so I had to learn that that's not how we want to relate to ourselves. And as a matter of fact, I ended up not playing college golf because my self-worth was diminished so much during this time. I was like, I can't go on anymore because I feel so worthless. I feel so helpless. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And so this matters so much because it makes you ask, am I still enough when I can't do anything for anyone? And I think that's a big question that we all think about, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. Like, can I be the person I need to be for my partner? Will this person like me based on what I can do for them? And instead, we have to find a way to just look at ourselves and be like, do I love myself right now? Rather than do I love what I can do for people right now? And so as we learn what conditional love is, we can also learn what unconditional love is. And it doesn't mean that you all of a sudden give up on growth. It doesn't mean like, oh, okay, we're perfect, we're good to go, there's nothing that we need to change. In fact, it makes change more possible, and that's what I found the most interesting. So as I started working on the self-love and supporting myself, all of a sudden I noticed change became easier. And that, I think, is one of the most powerful things, is once we realize that by supporting ourselves, we can change more easily, we can become better, we can grow. That's what makes life exciting, because then we start seeing the progress in all areas of life where maybe we didn't see it before. And so we need to reframe what unconditional self-love actually looks like. And it means you stop tying your self-worth to productivity and what you can do for others. And it means you talk to yourself with compassion, especially when you messed up. It's on our worst days that I found out that I actually am able to show up for myself and make the biggest impact on my own life. And it's really tough to do this because we haven't been trained to do so. For so long, if we make a mistake, someone would yell at us. We'd yell at ourselves. Most of the time, we're beating ourselves up more than others are. And the thing is that becomes an issue in itself. You have to stop using shame as a motivation. You know, you can use the carrot or the stick. And what I've found is the stick can only get you so far. But at a certain point, you need to help coax yourself through things. You need to learn to support yourself when you fail. Learn to support yourself when you're not able to do something well. And I think that's where most people get into an issue, because you need to start asking yourself, when I make a mistake, do I turn inward with compassion or criticism? And we're more likely to learn from a situation if we're more open to it. Like if we're playing and we're having fun, we're more likely to be good at that subject. So if I'm playing golf and I'm out there and I'm stressing and I'm saying, I gotta be perfect out here, I gotta hit every shot exactly how I want to, that becomes an issue in and of itself. And most of the best psychologists in the world say, regardless of what you're doing, if you want to get into a flow state, if you want to be good at what you're doing, the way to do that is to feel like it's play. to have fun. Because not only does our body relax when we do that, but our minds do as well. And when there's less pressure on our minds, all of a sudden it's a lot easier to figure out what we need to say, what we need to do. It's a lot easier to trust ourselves. And so as we go through this, it's important to learn to trust yourself, to show up compassionately when you make a mistake. And as you do this, it builds on reps and reps and reps. And your body starts thinking, okay, if I make a mistake, I don't need to flinch because, I'm going to get yelled at either by someone else or myself. But all of a sudden it's going to be, okay, we'll try again. So failures no longer become failures because they become an opportunity to practice this skill set. I've noticed that self-love comes super easy when life is going well, when we're doing well at work, when we're doing well socially, when we're able to hang out with friends, whatever it may be. But as soon as we make those mistakes, make those failures, all of a sudden it becomes a lot more difficult to support ourselves. And so learning to show up for ourselves over and over again in a compassionate way when this happens becomes one of the easiest ways to learn to love ourselves unconditionally. Because it no longer becomes, oh, did I do that as perfectly? Did I do that as well as I could have? Now, all of a sudden, doing something as well as you could have is more about how did you show up for yourself rather than the actual act. And so turning something from results-oriented to process-oriented is also one of the easiest ways to get better at something. Because results, we have off days, we have good days. Those are going to change. But our process, how we show up for ourselves, is something that we can control. And so we can't always control what the outcomes are, but we can control what happens in here. And so as I've learned to do this, all of a sudden my golf game has gotten better over the years. It's just an easy example because there's a physical manifestation of what's going on. And so before, when I would just berate myself after making a minor mistake, all of a sudden I'm able to show up for myself with compassion and love. And so if I hit one in the water, rather than being extremely worried that I might do it again, or later in the round I might have a shot that's similar and I might think, oh gosh, you did this terribly last time. Now all of a sudden I'm remembering how I showed up for myself and I'm thinking, okay, we tried. Maybe our alignment was off. Maybe we chose a bad target, but we tried. And so I'm focusing instead on the things that I can control. And when I do that, all of a sudden I've learned that I can grow more as a person. I can become better at what I'm doing. And I think that's one of the most interesting things is over the last, 8 years of treatments where I've been bedridden for probably 98% of life, all of a sudden I've found that my golf game progresses in a way that it never has. I've become a better golfer strictly because of how I show up for myself. And the cool thing is the rest of your life becomes a training ground for this. And so the most important time to practice is right after you mess up. And so start focusing on those small moments throughout your day where you do mess up, not as, hey, here's an example of why I'm a failure, but instead you can start using that as an example of why you're able to show up for yourself. And you'll notice that over time, you're going to start growing a lot more, not just as a person, but just everything in general. Everything will start becoming easier once your brain and body are able to relax a little bit more into it. And I think that's one of the coolest things as I've learned to get better at this, is I've started to see how it seeps into other areas of my life. Yes, I've had treatments that are just derailing my body. And I think I've swung a golf club maybe twice this year. And at the same time, I feel like I've never had more control over my golf game than I have before. And it's not because of what I can do physically, but because mentally I feel so confident in myself, so trusting of what I can do. And I know that others are going to be out there and they're going to be adding extra pressure where they don't need to. And so look for small areas in your life where you can learn to support yourself. And as you learn to support yourself, you'll notice how much easier it gets to be good at those things. And again, the focus is not on the results, but the results are a nice little afterthought to show if you're progressing in the way that you want. And so instead, next time when you make a mistake, rather than berate yourself for that little mistake, start focusing on how you can show up for yourself with love. And there's many ways that we can do this. You spill coffee on your shirt and say, all right, cool. Didn't mean to do that. Miss a workout, say it's okay. Tomorrow I'll get it. I feel like you don't show up for someone well like you wanted to. Say I'm human. I still love myself. Now again, this does not mean that you just have an escape button an eject button for any of your mistakes. Obviously you want to keep showing up how you want to show up. However, if the mistake is already made, you can't undo it. Nothing will change by just crapping on yourself nonstop. In fact, it just makes it worse. And you'll probably make that mistake more because there's going to be more paralysis around that situation next time. So, again, you want to have discipline. You want to work on showing up for people how you want to. But when the mistake does come, make sure to take it a little easy on yourself. Because odds are you're going to be a lot more self-respecting and confident in yourself if you're able to show up for yourself in that way. And next time that situation does come up, it's going to be a lot easier for you to show up how you want to. Your brain's going to be under less pressure, and there's going to be a lot less fight or flight when you get into that situation. So think of these as mental push-ups, and each rep that you do starts to rewire your brain, and over time this becomes your new baseline. So as you work on yourself, make sure to have discipline, but I think more importantly is to have the self-compassion along with that. Self-talk is how we show up for ourselves, both in our best and our worst moments. So, next time you think of the question, what you love in life, I hope that you are part of that. I hope that you say yourself, because you do deserve love for what you do. You do deserve love, even if you can't do anything for others right now. You're worthy of love. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.